Harp's House. In your eardrum. Speaker box. Man, wherever you want me to be.
You're now listening
to Harp's House. Thanks everybody for tuning in to a special edition of Harp's House. This is a brand new edition of a new relationship segment that I'm rolling out every Wednesday because I have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Hicks. She's an entertainment and mental health expert with her PhD in clinical psychology from Loma Linda University in California. Now she's trained at hospitals including Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and Kaiser Permanente. Now, Dr. welcome to the show. Round of applause. How you doing?
Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here. We can talk about relationships.
Exactly. So let's dive in. A big point of contention that men and women typically have these days, again, it's February, it's 2017, is social media and the role of social media in the dynamic of a relationship. So just off the top of your head, what are your expectations or what are your thoughts with how social media plays into the norms of a relationship today?
A lot of my patients would come in talking about issues with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and feeling, that their relationship was damaged by it. But I want to say that there's actually a lot of things that social media can do that can actually help a relationship.
Okay.
I feel like people really don't talk about that too much. But one really positive thing is you're getting an opportunity to get to know somebody without confusion and without sexuality being a part of it, right? When you're talking to somebody, sometimes they kind of they lean over, they get close, and sex can get in the way of relationships. But if your partner's on one side of the country, you're on the other side, and you're communicating through social media, it actually allows you an opportunity to really get to know somebody without physical confusion.
Right.
And then you have to sit there and you have to actually read everything they say before you respond, as opposed to trying to butt in when they're talking.
But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Great.
Are you really meeting that person, or are you meeting, like Chris Rock would say, their representative?
But I feel like when you start a relationship, you're meeting someone's representative no matter what.
Gotcha.
Even if you're talking to them in person. But there's something, I've heard a lot of success stories, actually, from people who meet online. And sometimes it's stranger places. It's not always, Match.com. It's places like Facebook. I've known of people who met on Craigslist.
Wow.
Trying to sell something.
Right.
You would never, I would never think that you would meet someone there that wouldn't be scary and dangerous.
Right.
But it's happened.
But what about some of the boundaries in terms of having your partner's password and things like that to their Twitter or their Instagram? What are your thoughts on that?
See, for me, I feel like if somebody needs to have somebody else's password, there is a definite trust issue in that relationship, and that to me is a big problem.
But isn't there always a state of uneasiness, especially if you're dating somebody who's popping? Think about it. If your significant other is like you said, fine or really popular, and people are trying to constantly get at them,
yeah.
Isn't there just a natural set of uneasiness there, or no?
But for me, I guess I feel like this. When working with a client, I really focus on the individual. So if you're having a problem with your spouse because they're really attractive, or a lot of people are really drawn to them, you have to really ask yourself, why are you attracted to somebody that might not be faithful to you?
Right.
Why would you be in a relationship with someone that makes you uncomfortable?
Right.
The point of a relationship is to feel good and to have someone who supports you and loves you and makes your life better.
But it's all about, it's all about uncertainty, though. So all you can do is hope that it works out. But like you said, don't you kind of always have in the back of your head, I don't know. Or no, you think it's you always got to go in with an open set, just thinking it's going to work out. But like I said, what if you met that person online, you slid in a DM? Then how does that change the dynamic?
I think that's actually a really, really great point, is that the way that you meet a person is the way you assume they're going to meet somebody else.
Uh-huh.
So if your spouse was in a relationship and was sneaking behind their partner's back to talk to you on direct message, then you can assume that they're doing that to you.
Right.
And so I think that it's also important to meet people in the right way. You have to be ready. You have to be prepared. And maybe maybe they were in a relationship, but maybe they cut it off and they're respectful. They were like, you know what? I really want to start something with you, so I'm going to end the thing with my other person.
Right. So
I
guess
that would make me a little bit more confident.
So like you said, you kind of, the way you start a relationship pretty much dictates how you're going to flow through it, I guess you would say.
I could see, because people have patterns, and human beings function in patterns. Whatever works, we tend to do more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So if it works for you to be in one relationship and then get another man or another woman while you're in that relationship and then keep going, and you don't have too many repercussions, you're going to keep doing it.
But what about the girl who gets on his neck and is like, I can't believe you slid in that girl's DM when he slid in your DM when he got at you. Like, you are who you are.
Exactly. And I think that also they have to realize, well, this is how he got at me, so I need to understand. Like, when you have girls whose men were married,
right,
and they were the mistress, and
right,
now they're scared there's going to be another mistress. Well, they might be right to be scared there's going to be another mistress.
Right, right.
Because patterns we develop them for a reason. They're biological and evolutionary.
But what if, okay, so say, hypothetical situation, say somebody like sends a message to your husband on Instagram. Would you feel some type of way about it if they're like heart faces and emojis all under their picture? Would you be like, yo, who is this? Or like, not tripping?
So are you asking Dr. Allie or are you asking Allison?
How about we do both? I'm asking Allison and Dr. Allie.
Okay. Personal Allison actually would not care at all.
At all?
No, because that's me and his relationship. You know, we're cool.
Right.
Like, that's us. And I don't think that's everybody. Because putting my Dr. Allie hat on, it really depends on the level of trust that you have in your relationship. I think trust and communication are some of the central things, the central components for a healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. If you have lost faith or trust in your partner, it is very difficult to allow them to do anything. Right. Because going to the grocery store might actually be something else if you don't have faith in them. And it's impossible to prove that you haven't done something. Right. How do you prove to someone that you didn't cheat on them when you went to the grocery store?
Yeah, you can't. It's like you said, if the person thinks you did it, you, for all intents and purposes, have done it.
Exactly. And so if there's no trust, the relationship is going to be very altered. And I mean, if it's in your comfort zone to let your partner have your passwords, you know, fine. Like, I give my husband my passwords, but that's just because I'm like, well, what if I like hit my head and you have to take me to the hospital, I'm in a coma, and you need to get money out of my bank account?
Right.
You know,
right.
So more it's just for like practical stuff, or he has to open my phone sometimes when I need him to open it, but I'm in the other room. So
isn't that funny though? I bet plenty of women would give their husband their ATM code and not their Twitter password and not their IG password.
That's probably true.
Oh man, like, you could have my money, but you can't be seeing my DMs. Yo, it's a cold world. It's a cold world. But sticking with that, do you think that, like, so where's the line between I trust you and I'm just naive and I think like you would never do anything to me because I'm so much in love with you? Where's that line come in at?
Wow, I think it's so individual, right? I think that I think a lot of it goes back to the way we're raised. Mm-hmm. And there's this concept called attachment styles. And early on in the first few months of your life, you form a special attachment to your caregivers. Okay. And that attachment style is based on how your caregivers respond to you. Because as an infant, you can't do anything for yourself. If your parent wasn't there to pick you up, you would literally die.
Drop one of clues bombs for Dr. Allie for dropping knowledge on the podcast. Keys, major keys. Go ahead, continue on.
I love it. Like, a child would literally die if they're not touched by a human being because it releases oxytocin. And so we build these attachments, and there's like secure attachments, there's insecure attachments, there's anxious attachments and avoidant attachments and disorganized attachment. So if you formed a disorganized attachment because maybe you had like an abusive parent, right? It's going to be harder for you to trust people. Because if the person who was supposed to take care of you in the beginning of your life didn't do that, it's hard for you to expect somebody now that is an adult to be able to do that for you as well. Gotcha. That makes sense. So you have to look at these types of things and think about, like, so we get people who are matched, who are not correctly matched. I don't say correctly, but who don't have similar attachment styles. Okay. So you have one person that may have a really confident, comfortable attachment, and another person that is very uncomfortable in their attachment styles. And so that is where you see a lot of problems.
Gotcha. So how do you find out who works with your attachment style? Is there an app for that? How do you find
There are. Wait, but there are therapy apps.
Oh, Lord.
There are therapy apps.
Okay.
There's an app for everything.
Clearly. You got Uber Eats and a therapist, all of it.
I'm telling you, like, legitimately. But like that is something that I think I'm a big believer in going to therapy. I'm a big believer in learning yourself and learning who you are as a person and being able to kind of be like flexible in how you view yourself. But yes, therapy is one really great way to begin to learn how to move forward and build healthy relationships.
Right.
So many people have so many unhealthy relationships.
Right.
And I personally think therapy is helpful, individual as well as couples therapy.
Gotcha. So like I said, pulling it back to social media. So you said it kind of depends on the relationship and the two specific people in that relationship, if they're cool with giving their partner their password information and things like that, right?
Yeah. I would never say that giving your partner a password is like abusive. You know,
Right.
If your partner wants your password and you're okay with them having it, that's fine. That's how your relationship works.
Right.
But if your partner is very suspicious of you all the time and is forcing you to give your password and you're not comfortable doing that, then that might be, a sign. There's more nuance to it, and if you want your partner's password and they're maybe being really sneaky about it and they refuse to give it and you think something's going on, that could also be problematic. So there's a lot to it.
Right. What about the guy who sees like heart emojis under his girl's, Instagram or Twitter, and he's like, "Yo, who is this?" But that's his way of showing affection that he like wants to know who's talking to you. Is that okay?
I don't know. It just got me thinking about Chris Brown.
Hey, that's real. I love you, girl. You gonna listen to me. I'm the stalker type. I'm crazy.
Right? It's just I think it's Chris Brown and Soulja Boy about to fight about that.
Right.
So it just got me thinking about that. But I think what's interesting is we have this whole new, our whole generation, the millennial generation, is so more focused on social connections online than our parents' generation was.
Right.
And so we're kind of seeing this like societal evolution having to happen where we're having to kind of reformulate relationships. And we're caught in it, especially those of us that are kind of on the older end of the millennials.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we were, for like you said, our generation, we were around before the internet was even a thing in middle school and elementary school to now it's all completely encompassing of our lives. So we've kind of, like you said, literally been stuck in the middle of it. So it's like, what do you hold on to? That old traditional, like you said, dynamic between our parents or this new wave of like the kids today who are like, what do you mean no internet? There's no what? You know what I mean?
What is a cassette? I saw some children playing with phones, like in the wall phones, like, oh, this is so crazy. Yeah, and we have a whole generation, and for them, social media relationships are the most natural thing you could think of.
Right.
Relationships are they're a little bit more spontaneous. They happen a little bit quicker. They start faster. They end faster. The same emotions are involved. But then when you get us, we're at the top of the millennials. And I think that we're the ones that are probably the most confused, where we really want these meaningful long-term relationships. And then we're kind of forced to get them on Instagram and on on Twitter and Snapchat. And so we're kind of out of our own element. And I think that these relationships can be very meaningful, can be very long-lasting, can really become something beautiful. But I also think that you just have to be ready to really commit yourself to something like this. Both partners have to be ready because there's different challenges associated with falling in love with someone that might be in a different country or a different state or, they could be anywhere, and you have to really be okay with that.
Right. That makes sense. Well, let's take a step away for a second, let it breathe, and we'll be right back on Harp's House. And we're back after our first and only break of this special relationship segment. I'm here again with Dr. Allie Hicks, who is an entertainment and mental health expert with a PhD in clinical psychology from Loma Linda University. We're talking about social media dynamics and how that plays into relationships between a man and a woman, or between a woman and a woman and a man and a man in 2017. So let's talk about boundaries in social media. How do you kind of how would you advise some of your clients to establish boundaries so a guy won't be like, well, what do you mean? Because I know I've been in situations where I know me as a man, I'm very literal. I want you to spell it out, make it black and white so I totally understand where you're coming from. And I won't be in the situation where you're like, you should have known. And I'm like, what you mean? What am I supposed to know? I can't read your mind. So go ahead.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I would have said. Is it's about being as clear as possible, never assuming that somebody understands what you mean, what you're indicating. You always have to lay things out. I think that's why communication is so important. You can never assume that someone will read your mind because in those instances, you're going to be let down.
Right.
Every single time you want someone to read your mind, you're going to be let down because they're never going to read it perfectly.
Who do you think has the worst misconception of that? Who always assumes you should just know? Men or women?
What are you even talking about?
I'm asking. Who do you...
I can't even answer that. I don't know.
It's women. Women are notorious for being like,
I know guys who do the same thing. Like, you should have known not to be around that guy. You should have known
That's true.
not to this and that. You should have known not to be out so late. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody does it. I just think that we're socialized to focus when women do it.
That's true. That's true.
Because when men do it, we assume it's for a logical reason. But when women do it, we assume it's for an emotional reason. So I would say everybody does it.
Well,
everybody wants everyone to read their mind all the time.
I think men come from that because to us, like you said, a lot of us operate on logic. And we're like, well, what would make you logically think you can be with that man in that setting if we're together? Yeah. Like, that defies logic. That doesn't make sense. So I think that's why we assume that you're supposed to operate on logic. But like you said, sometimes... a woman's logic doesn't line up with the man. So then that's when you have 2 + 2 = 78. It doesn't work.
Exactly. I think we all think differently. We were all raised differently. We were all socialized differently. And that's where I think communication is so wildly important. You can never leave anything to chance. And I think the big problem with people being like black and white about the things that they want and being really specific is that most people don't know what they want.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is if you don't know what you want, you cannot ask anybody for it. If you don't know what happiness looks like, how can you tell somebody what would make you happy? If you don't know what a good relationship looks like, how can you ask somebody to give you that? And so I think that's where we end up hitting a lot of miscommunications between couples, where neither of them really know what they want. They just know they don't want what's happening right now.
Well, what if a guy, for instance, comes from a very stable situation and the girl doesn't? How can he expect her to have an idea of what's a stable relationship if she's never seen one coming up, or vice versa?
Yeah. And I think in those circumstances, in those instances, you really have to give the person who's having more difficulty, like, on one hand, you have to be very accepting because you chose this person.
Right.
So you chose them. So that means that you chose to kind of be in this position where you may have to deal with some behaviors that aren't typical for you because you chose that. But
Gotcha.
obviously, if things start to get dangerous or definitely uncomfortable, then those relationships need to be terminated if anything, dangerous is happening. But in all honesty, I think it's imperative upon the person who's had maybe some inconsistent attachment in the past,
right,
to realize that they want something to be different. Because if they don't want something to be different, you can't want it for them.
But at what point does a person kind of become who they are? Like you said, somebody's able to mold and teach at like 15, 19. But if somebody's like 30, they kind of either got it or they don't at 30, right?
Well, if we're thinking classically biologically, your character is formed between the ages of 5 and 7. So you are who you are by the time you're 7.
What? That's bananas. Yeah. So I am the
first
same.
5.
That's crazy.
That's why they say first 5. They're the most important years of your life. You spend that time learning 75% of the things you're ever going to learn in your entire life.
Really? That's crazy.
Your brain forms, like, those years are some of the most important. And it's interesting to me because we treat those as the least important years. People say, like, oh, he won't remember. Don't worry about it.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
They do. They don't cognitively remember. Like, you can't remember a lot of the things your parents said. But what happens is you build muscle memory. Your body remembers, which is much more ingrained. Those are things that you can't forget.
Okay.
And so that doesn't mean by any stretch that people cannot change, because people can absolutely change. People can grow and people can learn. But it's harder.
But
They talk about, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, just because you've been doing something for years and years and years, it's hard for you to learn to do something differently, but you can absolutely learn to do something differently, especially if you want to.
I was going to say, I feel like that's the key, though. You have to want to do something differently. But if you continue to keep making the same mistake over and over and over, why should your significant other think you're ever going to change if you keep doing the same thing over and over?
you might not change. And I think that's also something that people need to be okay with. And they need to, one of my favorite talk show hosts, she's no longer on the air, but she used to always say, if you wouldn't marry that person right now, the way they are right now, then you should never do it because they're unlikely to change. It doesn't mean it's impossible for them to change, but changing is something that takes a lot of effort. You have to really want it, and you have to know how to do it. You can't just wake up and say, all right, no more chocolate ever again, not eating chocolate. You have to understand what you're going to replace chocolate with. If chocolate was a big part of your life, you need to understand how to build a structure around you to support you away from chocolate and toward carrots or whatever it is you want to replace it with. Right. So if you don't have a structure around you to create change, a support system, it's going to be very difficult.
Right.
And yet again, you have to have the motivation. And so a lot of times if you're in a comfortable relationship and that person isn't leaving you, even though things are uncomfortable, people get comfortable in their discomfort.
What does that mean?
The negative and uncomfortable, like, for example, abusive relationships where someone is physically abusing the other becomes normal. Your body begins to associate love with abuse.
Gotcha.
And so so actually being in a relationship that's not abusive becomes uncomfortable for people.
Gotcha, because that's what they know and that's what they become used to and accustomed to. So they're like, what's going on? This is not what I'm used to.
Exactly, even though it's healthy.
Right.
You know, like not everyone likes salad because they're used to eating French fries. I would rather order French fries with my meal than a salad.
Right.
Salad is clearly better for me, but the French fries, I'm just used to the French fries though. I like that taste. I don't care. Right. You know? So,
right.
So you really have to want to change. And so I think a lot of people in relationships get accustomed to the maladaptive and unhealthy patterns that they've formed.
Okay.
And so the idea of changing those patterns becomes so overwhelming because what if you change and everything's worse? At least you know what to expect with the horrible pattern that's happening now.
Gotcha. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's do a little rapid fire about compromising situations on social media and Instagram. So if we're just going to throw out some scenarios. These are not my scenarios. So if a guy or a girl is so let's say if a guy is constantly liking photos of a particular girl and his girlfriend doesn't like it, how should she address that with him?
I think you should just come up to him straightforward, like very, very forwardly, and just say, "I don't like that you're doing this. I don't like that you're commenting on this girl's page all the time. It makes me feel uncomfortable."
Gotcha. And what if he's like, "Why are you tripping? It's just Instagram. I'll never meet her ever in life. Like you're blowing this totally out of proportion."
Well, I think that then she should either say okay or no. I feel like these are, to me, you're dating. Break up.
What?
You're dating. You're not married to this man. You don't have kids with this man. Yeah,
but people don't want to just blow it up just because on a Tuesday, like.
No, I'm a believer in if you don't fit, you don't fit. I'm not going to force somebody to fit me. I'm going to wait until somebody does. And if you don't think that like things that are important to me are important to you, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. Just means you're not my person.
But how quick are you to hit the eject button? Because I feel like your hand's always on the button. Like I'm ready.
No, I'm married. And I feel like once you're married, there's no more eject button.
Right.
Like, I'm done ejecting. I ejected to my marriage. I kept ejecting. I was like, nope.
Well, no, I meant like in a dating scenario. Like, I feel like you're like, yo, if you don't listen, I'm out. Like, it's very simple.
No, and that's how I feel. Because, and obviously, there are some things that are bigger than other things. Like, I feel like cheating, like me, Dr. Allie, adultery is out. If we are dating and you can't stay loyal to me, what's the point?
Right. That's fair.
So if Instagram is a big thing to you, and if you feel, because a lot of people feel like constantly liking and commenting on another woman's page or another man's page even is adultery.
No, that's a stretch.
For a lot of people, not for me, but for me personally, I would just giggle. But for a lot of people, that stuff is really real, and these are the millennials, you know.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's like a gateway to like being promiscuous and not doing what you're supposed to be doing with your mate by constantly liking and being on somebody else's Instagram?
I think anything can be a gateway to that. You know what I'm saying? Almost anything. But I think if you're not comfortable in your relationship, if you're a person who kind of has an eye always toward other people, it absolutely could be a gateway. And I feel like if your partner is really uncomfortable with it, and you know, there's so many hypothetical situations that could be happening. Like if you've already done something or if they're, a little insecure, this could absolutely be a problem. And you should maybe think about liking less.
Right.
And you should even have to wonder why your partner's even paying that much attention to your Instagram.
Gotcha. Okay, here's another scenario. What if a girl is all under your man's photos, commenting the heart faces and like just sweating your man? Like, how should you handle that situation?
Well, again, I would just laugh about it and think it was cute, I probably honestly wouldn't notice because I'm horrible and I don't go to his page enough.
Gotcha. I got a friend who would pop up. She would just pop up and be like, we got a problem.
See, but I think that being direct is effective. If you have a problem with something, I don't think you should hold it in. I think you should find an effective way to communicate to your partner.
Right.
Like, if they've just come home from work and when they come home from work, all they want to do is like sit down and eat something and relax, that's not the time.
Right. So, let the man eat his steak and let the man eat and then jump on his neck. That's how I feel.
Find a time that's appropriate, and I would never say actually jump on his neck, but come to him in a way that he can communicate. You'd say, maybe you do something nice for him, and you'd be like, babe.
Oh, you set him up.
Yes, you got to get him nice. You got to ease him. You got to ease him into it.
I can't deal. I can't.
Because you don't want an argument. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to argue. You just want a conversation so you can actually get a resolution. Because if y'all are screaming at each other, you're not going to get a resolution. Do
you lead into it, though, with the dreaded we need to talk? Because that's, where that's going as a man.
I try not to say that because people do know. It's like, oh, my God, is she going to break up with me? Is she going to leave me?
Right.
What is happening? Like, it's always the worst.
Right.
I just would talk about it. I would just be like, I would probably just like start talking about like, oh my gosh, I was on Instagram earlier today and I was looking at this person's stuff and can you believe so-and-so? And then I saw that so-and-so had commented on your page. What is going on with that? Like, I would keep it light. In my way, I kind of tell jokes and like to make things funny.
Yeah.
So I would probably like make a joke about it to make it like kind of funny and just see how he responds and have him, because it might just be nothing. It might be like, yeah, that girl, she's crazy. Like, I don't know why she keeps liking my stuff, whatever. Or it might be like, oh yeah, I knew her from like kindergarten. We went to elementary school together. So you might actually be able to get the story, and that might calm you down and keep you from thinking it's like some lover.
Right.
And then you have to take what he says as being the truth.
Yeah, but then you also got some ride or die set it off. That's like, no, don't worry about it. I'll get to the end of the story myself. How about I text her and see what's up? How about I slide in her DM and see what she...
I know plenty of girls who have done that. I watch Catfish.
Right.
90% of Catfish is that.
Right. It's
like a woman who's like trying to figure out who another woman is, so she becomes a man on Instagram and then like starts liking all her pictures, and now they're like dating.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Well, I got one more scenario. What do you do when a man and a woman, they said, they're going back on social media and they can't seem to like find that common ground about what's acceptable? Like, how do you write it down? You make it black and white, or you just say like, yeah, how does that work?
I feel like if two people can't come to an agreement, you really do. I would write it down. Mm-hmm. I would separate. I would go to my corner, he would go to his corner. We would both take out, pieces of paper, and we would say, like, maybe at the end of the week, like, let's come back into the middle.
Right.
And let's see what we've, like, separately, kind of what our expectations are, kind of what we want to see from our partner on social media. And I'm going to even say, like, not to get too specific, like, focus it more on, like, your feelings and how you feel. Like, I feel uncomfortable when you have direct message conversations with women that I don't know.
Right.
I feel insecure when you like pictures of women that I feel like might be prettier than me and you might be more attracted to. As opposed to like, you better not like this girl, you better not like that, you better not, when you keep it focused on you, it's less likely that your partner will feel defensive.
Right.
Because if you're like, you better not be on there wearing, having your butt hanging out and with a short skirt, you better not do, then that makes you, people, now you're like enemies.
Right.
Now it's me against you. But if it's like, honey, like when you wear a picture, when you take pictures of yourself, wearing like really small clothes, it makes me feel like you don't really love me as much and you want other men to pay attention to you. And I really
that was
love
amazing.
You.
I love how you put that. That was so eloquently put. And that was nice. That was nicely done. What about... And
you're not going to attack your man for that.
True. What about the girl or the guy, for that matter, who, whenever you guys have some drama or like a disagreement, he takes all the pictures down of you two together? He's like the serial eraser or the serial, like, I'm taking it down.
I hate the social media tap. Like, we broke up. So either, like, I explode on social media and tell them everything that's ever happened in my relationship from, like, the time he looked at my sister's butt.
Or I erase you from the world.
Like, everything that's ever happened. Or the person who goes the opposite direction and implodes on themselves and, like, shuts their whole social media life down and only puts up pictures of, like, them walking in the field by themselves looking depressed.
Right.
Yeah, I think that doing anything in a rash way will lead to embarrassment.
Gotcha. That's fair enough. And then last but not least, what do you do when your significant other won't post any pictures of you because they think, oh, it's not professional, or I have to present a certain image to the public? Is that like a warning sign where you're like, yeah, what you mean?
See, and that's a hard one. That is really a hard one because it hurts. It hurts when a person won't post pictures of you because it makes you feel like
you're denying, you're denying me to the world.
You're denying this relationship. But I feel like this: if they have a real, actual, legitimate reason for it, and it's not like they might just have another family, like and then because then there's solutions to that, like a private page.
Right. Having
a private personal page that is just your friends, people you actually know, and then you put me on that page, as opposed to having your public persona page. Gotcha. Like if you are like a pastor or something and you have a public persona page and you're single but you're dating, you might not want to put every single girlfriend you have up on that page.
Right.
Because your congregation might be like, well, why is my pastor dating so many girls? He might
getting it
wait
in,
until,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You might want to wait until the relationship blossoms into something more meaningful.
Right.
Or he might never want to until you guys are married. Who knows? But I feel like it's really about understanding why they're doing it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, I think that is more than enough for this first special edition of Relationships on Harp's House. Thanks again, Dr. Allie Hicks, who again is a entertainment and mental health expert who has a PhD in clinical psychology from Loma Linda University. Again, I'm going to try to get Dr. Allie on the show once a week. We're going to talk relationship drama and the many, many, many topics that we can go on for days, nights, and weeks here on Harp's House. So again, thanks for stopping by the crib. And again, thanks to everybody for listening. You can shout me out on social media. So my Instagram is I am Harper. My Twitter is I am Harper. You can also subscribe in the Google Play Store as well as the iTunes podcast section. And that's, again, Harp's House. Or you can check out my website, which is also Harp's House. And there's 2 little tabs on the top of every page that says subscribe. So make sure you subscribe to Harp's House. Again, that's Harp's House, and I'm your host, Jonathan Harper. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Allie Hicks. So we're going to shut it down this time, and we'll see you guys in a week. God bless.
Bye.